Hey guys, Tammy here, and in this video we're going to talk about damage control after you screw up. Now, a lot of times when we screw up, we know it, and I find that screw ups come in one of three arenas most commonly. Either we say something to our kids in the heat of the moment that we shouldn't have, like something negative about the other parent, or maybe something about court, or something that really we know shouldn't have come out of our mouths. Or number two, we lose it in the courtroom, right? We lose it in front of the judge, or we lose it in front of a child custody expert or somebody like that, where we get overly emotional, overly hysterical. Or thirdly, we actually lose it with our ex, right? Maybe even if you're on a parenting app, many people will just have that snap moment where they fly off in their communication or whatever, and they have this negative thing out there now that they wish that they could take back. And what most people do is they just beat themselves up over these screw ups. They just are like ruminate about them, and they just feel terrible, and they feel like they've totally destroyed their own chance of success in their case. Okay. But that's not true. There are things that you can do, and some of it may not be exactly what you think. Let me just remind you, if you like the content, don't forget to hit like on this video. And also, if you have not yet subscribed, please do that. It's very important. It helps me. It helps the channel. It helps more people find me. It helps me be able to create more content that reaches more people. So it really is very, very helpful. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do that. And also, as always, feel free to share this on social media. Our first instinct when we do have some sort of hiccup like this is, oh my gosh, I have to do some kind of damage control, right? So we'll send a follow-up email to our ex, a follow-up message, or we'll go back and have another conversation with the kid and say, hey, I shouldn't have said that, or whatever. Or we're in front of the court and we're trying to explain ourselves and explain why we got upset and whatever. And honestly, I find that the vast majority of the time that when people go back to try to do damage control on these issues, it usually makes it worse. And I want to look at this from each of these three different issues and kind of talk about it a little bit. And I want to start with when you do this with your kids, okay? When you do this with your kids and you, like I said, you said something you shouldn't have or whatever, I'm not saying that it's not good to go back and apologize and say, hey, I got angry, I lost my temper, whatever kind of thing, okay? That's always a good thing to do as a parent if your reaction was unwarranted. Sometimes the anger is warranted, right? Sometimes your kid's being a jerk and they need to learn not to behave that way, and your anger was totally warranted. But just because the anger is warranted doesn't mean that we maybe didn't say something that we shouldn't have. And I'm talking about specifically in regard to the other parent or court or something of that nature. And what I find is that when we go back and we try to do that damage control, and I think I see this most often with kids ages like maybe 6 to 12, because I think in that age range, they're like old enough to kind of be aware and repeat things that we say, but they haven't reached a cognitive level to be to have an understanding of how that might do damage between the co-parenting relationship, between the households, in your court case, whatever. They don't understand all those different aspects, right? But they do know enough to know how to repeat something at that stage. So I think that's where I see the most common happening of people trying to do damage control with the kids is in that age range. Not that it doesn't happen with teenagers too, but it's just most common in those ages. But honestly, when you go back and you try to sort of undo what you did or try to say, hey, kind of forget what I said, erase it from your memory, whatever, it actually almost makes it worse because it points out to the child that, hey, you said something that you shouldn't have. Now that's stuck in their head. Whereas before, if they'd been asked about it or whatever, kids just kind of go on with their lives and most things kind of roll off their back. Even things that seem huge to us, a lot of times a kid didn't even pay attention to. So sometimes you can almost like point out the fact that, oh my goodness, I said something I shouldn't have, because you're going back and trying to do damage control. So one of the very first things that I teach my clients is don't try to do any damage control. If you screwed it up, you screwed it up. If you need to go back and apologize because you overreacted, whatever, that's fine. But don't try to then undo something that you said that you shouldn't have. In court, that's the next scenario I want to talk about. It's sort of the same thing. I mean, you can't really go in and say, hey, never mind that I said those things, right? In court, it's sort of the opposite. You actually want to take responsibility. Okay, if you're in front of that expert again, or the court again, or whoever, you want to, or even maybe children's attorney, there's a lot of people that this can kind of happen in front of. And you want to just say, look, I know I kind of overreacted the last time. Maybe you got a little bit nasty. Whatever the thing was that you did, just say, hey, this has been a really difficult process. I get very emotional sometimes. I don't mean to do that. I know that you're trying to make decisions and that kind of thing, and like taking responsibility for the fact that you did do it and that you're aware and that you're trying not to repeat the behavior. And even in court, I think that's helpful. I see it a lot of times when people are self-represented, and I don't think you need to make a big, long thing about it. You don't have a lot of time when you're in court. But let's say that the last time you were in, you did kind of go off and you got emotional and the court like cut you off and you didn't get to finish what you were saying, whatever. And now you're in front of the judge again and you want the opportunity to speak. But now that judge maybe has a kind of a preconceived notion of how you're going to react and they're hesitant to let you say anything. And I would say something like, Your Honor, if I could just say a couple quick things. I know that I got very emotional last time. I didn't mean to do that. That's just very difficult for me. I'm very passionate about being a parent and about the situation with my kids. And sometimes I just kind of overreact, and I apologize. I'm going to do my best not to do that this time. But I just have, 2 quick points for the court, or 3 quick points, or whatever your thing is. And try to be succinct. Try to stick with what you said, that you're going to be quick and you're going to try to move through it, stay big picture, but I think taking responsibility for that, especially with the judge, I think they really appreciate that. They're human beings. They understand that this is emotional for us. Their job is to be the non-emotional one. So they're not going to come back and say, oh, thank you for recognizing that. That's really, you're not going to get a cookie, right, for doing that. But I think that it is going to go a long way in how they're viewing your presentation of things. And I think it goes a long way in your credibility when you can just take responsibility. That's what the court wants to see out of anybody in any situation, no matter what you've screwed up, whether you've screwed up as a parent, whether you've got drug and alcohol addictions, whether you've got whatever it is. What the court really wants to see is us taking responsibility for the various behaviors that are damaging and trying to correct those, right? So I think when you can actually stand and verbalize that, it's really going to help your credibility a lot. And of course, don't repeat the behavior. You've got to be grounded and calm and all those things, and not repeat the reaction and the hysteria. Because if you apologize for it, but then you repeat it, you're not going to do yourself any good, right? It's just going to be like the boy that cried wolf. Like, you keep doing the behavior. So the court's going to be like, okay, well, you're verbalizing it, but you're not actually getting it. Okay. We want to actually get it. That's very important. The third scenario that we talked about is, if you flew off the handle at your ex. And I think that this is also another common place that people want to do damage control, right? They go into a parenting app, Our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, App Close, whatever it is, and they go into that parenting app and they react. And then they're like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have said that. How do I make up for this? Or what can I say? Or how do I would again tell you, don't. Anything that you do in the app that is doing damage control is just, the court's going to see that you're just trying to like cover up your tracks from what you did before. And again, you don't owe the explanation to your ex. I mean, you would owe the explanation to court if this particular scenario ever came up. But if you go back and you try to do damage control and you re-engage with your ex and you have more conversation about it, it actually creates more and more negative interaction about it that can potentially be used. Whereas if you made a mistake and you just let it go and it's a little blip on the radar, it's going to be a lot easier to move past, and it has a higher likelihood of not coming up again down the road. So I always tell people, don't try to do damage control. If you want to go into your notes, your private personal notes that I hope you're keeping, if you watch my channel for any length of time, you know I talk about documentation, how important it is. This is the type of thing that you can go back and write in your own personal documentation about, you know, sent this message, wish I probably shouldn't have done that. It didn't go well, and, you know, whatever your notes are about it from your own perspective, so that if it does come up in the future, you can kind of refresh your memory on what has happened. Now, if you are having instances where you're letting your emotions out on your ex and you're engaging in this back and forth with them, the number one thing I can tell you to do is create space. Okay. Space gives you time to think and to respond appropriately. And so the way you do that is don't answer right away. So many clients that I start working with, they're on this track with a narcissistic person where they get a message, they're irritated, they respond, they want to get it off their plate. And then what happens? You just get another message. And then you respond, you want to get it off your plate, and then you just get another message. And it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like a ping pong ball. And, you know, I know sometimes you're under court order to respond within 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever kind of time frame that the court may have potentially put on it. But you needing to respond within 12 hours is very different than you responding within 30 minutes, right? And one of the things that our responses do is it gives the narcissist control of the speed, of the pattern of the interaction. So when you can slow that down and just create that gap and maybe not respond for 3 or 4 hours, even if you already think you know what you're going to say, what that will do is it will break that pattern of them controlling the speed of the conversation, and it will give you some emotional distance from having read that message, feeling all the feelings that come up in it, and you being able to go back and read it again before you actually respond once the emotions have kind of died down a little bit. But if you're responding right away, you're not even giving yourself the opportunity for that to even be able to happen. The moral of the story really is don't try to do damage control. If you're in court, take responsibility. If you owe your child an apology, apologize. With your ex, keep your notes about it private and just move forward and try to do better. That's really what the court's going to want to see. If they're looking at those communications, they're going to want to see that you're doing better and better and better. Okay. So if you'd like help learning how to do better and better and better, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page. You can learn more about my coaching services and potentially book a call if you're interested in premium one-on-one services. And I will see you guys next time.